Day.
Yes, happy election day to you too.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is BP General here. I am with our state auditor, Brian, and we are going to be doing a little interview today. So, Brian, is there anything you'd like to go over?
Well, I'll just start out by saying it's a real honor to do this with you. I have been interviewed by many, many people over the years. I've been in office 673 days, and they've all been awesome, and I've had lots of interviews, but none by such a distinguished young man as yourself, and I'm thrilled to be here today. So it's a great day on election day to be with you.
It's amazing to have you here. Alright, so, is there anything you would like to go over?
Well, you're welcome to ask me anything you like today, personal or professional. But I think for your listeners, maybe they'd like to know that the state auditor is in charge of overseeing all the expenditures of the state. So about $5 billion a year gets spent of taxpayers' money in New Mexico. And my job is to make sure it's spent appropriately without any waste, fraud, or abuse. And so I get to do that all day, every day. That's my job.
That is amazing. So, since you've been in for such a long time, are you still glad to be a state auditor, or would you ever want to leave someday, maybe?
You know, the constitutional officers of the state, which means the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the state auditor, the land commissioner, all of us, we are constitutional officers and we can serve up to 2 terms, and that would mean a total of 8 years. So I'm in the second year, I'm finishing out the second year, 673 days. I've loved every one of them. But we'll see what the voters want me to do next. We'll see what happens. But I've loved every day.
That's awesome. Keep them in, please.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to come in? Do questions?
Anybody else have questions? Oh, I think everyone ran.
I didn't know we had an audience. This is pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Man, you always attract an audience?
Sometimes.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So are you always going to be running for, staying in auditor, or do you think you want to run for something else for our state?
That's a good question, kind of back to the original question of how long I want to do this. And for me, it's just I practiced law in New Mexico for 20 years and loved every bit of that. And then I got elected and finally got my dream of being able to serve the state of New Mexico in elected office. So for me, it's really about being responsive to the voters in New Mexico, and if they want me to keep serving, I'll be saying yes every time. And it really kind of, the voters get to decide and drive where they think I might be able to serve them best. Some folks want me to be auditor, other folks want me to look at maybe becoming attorney general, and we'll just have to see where the future takes us. But just like you, my heart is in doing a good job, making people proud, my family proud, my supporters proud, and I try and do that every day.
That's awesome.
Good question.
Governor.
Anyone else want to do a question?
Is question?
No one else wants to do a question?
Well, what would you say is your most primary job of everything that you do?
Sure. So for me, we audit and review transactions in about 800 governmental entities all over the state of New Mexico. We oversee or conduct audits that are done of those entities. So that's super important. That's really the constitutional duty that I have.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have a special investigations division so that when the public has a concern about either elected officials or how the money is being spent, we're able to actually investigate and determine whether or not that money is being spent appropriately. So when you ask the question the way you did, my answer is usually pretty simple, and I think I'm one of the only people in government, state or local government, that actually has the ability to restore people's faith and trust in government. What I mean by that is a lot of people think there's a ton of corruption out there, and they think government just isn't working for them, and everybody's lining their pockets or stealing taxpayer money, right? So for me, if I do a good job and I engage the public in the conversation about what goes on, then I can actually restore their faith in government. Because if they call me and say, hey, look, we think something's going on over in Catron County, Doña Ana County, Hidalgo County, Rio Riba County, Bernalillo County, Valencia County, where I grew up, and if I investigate that and I check it out for them and I hold people accountable, then I think that gives me an opportunity to help people believe that their government really is working for them and that they have people who are elected that want to do the right thing. So I think
Wow.
personally for me,
Mhm.
it's about helping people be inspired about their government and believe in their government and then holding folks accountable. And that's how I do the first two things.
That is incredible. Thank you
You're
for doing that. So cool.
It's an
So
honor to do it.
Any person in New Mexico could ask you to check something out?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
And I think that's going to be my legacy is that we've taken the office on the road. I've been to all 33 counties since I was elected to make sure we can educate the public about the work we do because it's so important. People put their hard-earned money into the government and they ought to be able to trust that it's going where it's supposed to go. How are mic levels? You're very fancy over here.
We're doing pretty good.
Okay, good. Just checking.
We're 6 minutes in, so
All right. Well, what's your next question?
that's a good question actually.
All right.
Mhm.
I don't really know if I have one. Anyone else want to do another?
You're answering everything so well.
I feel like we've covered everything.
We covered quite a bit. Well,
What did you want to be when you grew up?
you're looking at it.
Really?
I can't believe you asked that question. So, a lot of people say, have you heard the expression living the dream?
Yes.
I bet you have, right? Everybody says it. A lot of people say, living the dream. I'm living the dream. Well, you're actually looking at a guy who is literally, which means in fact, and actually living his dream. When I was your age, how old are you?
14.
Exactly. When I was your age, I'd been interviewed by a newspaper. And they said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to be the first in my family to go to college and graduate. I want to get an accounting degree. I want to go to law school. And someday I want to run for public office and serve the state of New Mexico. And guess what happened over the next 35 years? I was the first in my family to go to college and I graduated. I got a finance degree instead of an accounting degree. I went to law school and now I'm living the dream of serving the people of New Mexico in public office.
That's amazing.
Right? Imagine.
That's incredible.
So really, that
So
like
cool.
I love when people ask, what did you want to do when you were younger? This is absolutely what I wanted to do with every fiber of my being. And the way I looked at it, from the time I was really young, I wasn't much older than you were, and about 4 or 5 years older than you are now, my dad passed away. He was only 49 years old. And when I was growing up, like most New Mexicans, I grew up in poverty, which means I was poor. And we needed every bit of help from the government we could get, which means the government helped pay for the roof over my head, the thing they called Section 8 housing. They put food on my table with things that they call commodities, which means free food. And then when I went to college, I was able to get some grants that they called Pell Grants, so that I could be the first in my family to go to college. And the way I looked at it was that when my father died, after he died, I didn't have a single blood relative in the entire state of New Mexico. Some families in New Mexico can say, I'm 14 generations New Mexican, and I've got tons of primos and primas, and my abuelitos, they all live within an hour of my house. I don't have anybody in New Mexico that I can say that about. All I had was my community. And the truth is, when I buried my father, I was a teenager. From that moment on, the community was my family. And the community made sure I didn't fall through the cracks and that I could actually live my dream. So for me, that meant that I owed a debt of gratitude, or I owed the community a lot. Because without their support, I never would have been able to survive and go to college and go to law school. And so for me, the public service part is really about trying to repay that debt. And that's pretty important to me. And I just, 673 days later, people like your mom and dad and so many other people, nearly 500,000 people voted for me in the last election. And so I get out of bed every day at 5 o'clock in the morning, ready to go, and I'm excited about it because I am literally living my dream.
That's amazing.
Wow. That's awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question.
Well, if anyone else wants to do another question?
All right, you think of one more question that you want to ask me? Everything's on the table. No question is the wrong question. You ask me anything before we wrap up this wonderful interview.
Yep.
That has now gone 10 minutes.
Yes.
And 10 minutes with you is like 1 minute. I love spending time with you. Anytime you got some
Thank
extra time on your hands, just call me up and say, hey, let's hang out. All right?
Got it.
One more question.
Okay. If want to do it?
Okay.
Oh man, I feel like you've covered everything.
Really?
Yeah.
My goodness. How many interviews have you conducted?
Not many,
Not many?
but I have
The
done
most
enough
important
to
one
know.
is this one.
Yes, but I haven't done enough to understand that that is a lot of information in such a small amount of time.
You are
That's
so
amazing.
articulate. I'm so glad you're not old enough to run against me yet. My goodness
I won't
gracious.
run against you.
Oh, I appreciate that. You're a superstar, man.
Thanks.
What are you going to do? What's your dream? I told you what my dream was when I was your age, 14. What's
My
your dream?
dream is either to invent something where we can all go to space, but instead of between the moon or Mars, we can probably go between the stars, or just be an astronaut myself.
That's fantastic. So here's the thing. What I need to do is I need to take you down to Spaceport America, which, as you know, it's the only inland spaceport in the world, or at least in the United States. I don't know if I can say the world, but in the United States. And I just did a big tour of Spaceport America, and they got, of course, our anchor tenant is Virgin Galactic. You've heard of that, right? You know who Branson is, right? The guy that did Virgin Galactic.
Yes.
So his international worldwide headquarters is, guess where? In New Mexico.
That's amazing.
A place called Spaceport America. He closed down his other headquarters and he moved everything to New Mexico.
Oh wow.
So Spaceport America is owned by the state of New Mexico, the taxpayers of New Mexico, and it's controlled by what's called the Spaceport Authority. And we are about to next year have our suborbital launch. That's going to be a personed aircraft that's going to go up into space. And we have a bunch of land down there that we developed, and we've got about 5 or 6 tenants down there that are all working on different types of space-related enterprise. But of course, the main tenant is Virgin Galactic, and they're going to be the ones that are charging people $250,000 to go up into space. Right? Like, you don't have to be an astronaut; you can just write the check and go up if you can get in line and get selected, right?
Oh, wow.
And so that commercial public space flight is going to be available out of New Mexico. The only place,
That's
right here, next year.
next year.
Probably fall of next year is supposed to be the initial launch. And so what I want to do is keep this in mind. What I'd love to be able to do is I just did a huge full-day tour of the spaceport with my staff. And it's about 3 hours south of here, so we have to plan a whole day. But at some point in the next couple of years, I want to get you down there, and I'll get you the VIP tour of Spaceport America. How about that?
That'd be awesome.
All right, put that on your list.
Okay, we'll do.
All right?
Yeah.
Good. That's
All
a
right.
very exciting goal. I've never met it. No, you know what? I've met 2 astronauts. Take it back.
Oh wow.
So when you listen to this, you can write down these names, all right? Because there are 2 New Mexicans who are astronauts. Did you know that? Big time astronauts, not just like wanted to become an astronaut and did the training and they worked for NASA. No, big time astronauts.
Did not know that.
The first one is Harrison Schmitt. He went on the, I think he went on the moon. Schmitt, look it up. Okay, and then he was a congressman. So Schmitt, and the other guy, I don't know if he was on an Apollo mission. I should know this, but the other big time astronaut from New Mexico was a guy by the name of, I think he was a commander, Frank Borman. Borman, Borman. And he, I don't know if he's still with us, former Congressman and astronaut Schmidt just passed away recently in the last year or 2. And then I think Frank Borman's already passed away, but I got to know him when I lived down in Las Cruces, and that's where he finished his years on Earth. And but he was a big-time astronaut. So New Mexico's had 2 big-time astronauts. You ought to be the 3rd.
That'd be
All
awesome.
right? I think that's a good place to end it. What do you think?
Oh yeah.
All right, Mr. Astronaut in Waiting. My name's Brian Colón. I'm your state auditor, and I'm honored to have spent this time with you.
It's an honor to have you here.
All right, I'm going to give you my cell number on the back of the card. You text me or call me anytime.
Okay. I hope you all enjoyed. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.